YouTube, what is going on? It is your boy Manu here, aka Mr. See It Before It Happens. And today, fellas, we continue our our Throwback Thursdays where we break down some of the Club Series games from Madden 21. And here we're gonna break down Fantasy and Decroft. And guys, I promise you, if you see me crying a little bit, if you see me laughing, I've been trying to control myself for the last 15 minutes before I started this video. Bro, how they did Decroft was so wrong, and I'm not going to be able to get over this for the entire video. I've been trying for 15 minutes to get myself together. I'm just not able to. So, bro, my dudes were like, hey, we can't get anyone else to take a shoot for Decroft, take a photo of him or whatever. My dudes are just like, hey, you got anything from the high school yearbook? Decroft's like, man, I don't got anything from high school. What about 7th grade? And they're like, yeah, screw it, let's go with that. And here it is. We got Decroft looking like bro, he literally looks like he's 12 years old, bro. What happened in this photo shoot? And then we got Fancy on the other side. So, again, guys, bear with me throughout this one. I couldn't get over the Decroft photo, for the longest time. So, I can't. They did Decroft so wrong in this, bro. I can't get over it. So, bear with me throughout this video. Bro, there's no way they did Decroft like this. But, anyways, there's no way. I can't fucking make it. Oh my god. Oh my god, I can't. I just gotta get past this screen, bro. I can't fucking do it. Oh my god. Oh. Oh, but. Alright. Oh my god. Ooh. Ooh. Okay. Alright. To start off, my I can't. I absolutely can't, bro. I don't know if I'm ever gonna be able to do a video on this on Decroft versus Fancy, bro. This is the only one I literally just can't do it, bro. They did them so wrong. My dude looked 12. I can't get over it. Oh my god. Oh. Alright, guys. I'm gonna do my best. Starting off again, Decroft versus Fancy. Again, I talked with D Davis a lot before these games. He was asking me for like predictions between the TNC guys, asking me for insight, and from knowing Decroft and Fancy, this was honestly the hardest matchup for me to pick. Not only the hardest video to do because of the Decroft looking like he's like 9 years old, but I think these guys are really similar in caliber, and I think they have somewhat similar strengths and weaknesses. So, I'm sorry, bro. Like I said, bro, I'm gonna try my best, bro. Every time I see Decroft, I just can't get the 12-year-old picture out of my head. But so Decroft, again, he's gonna be a little bit more slow paced on offense compared to Fancy. Super high powered on offense. Again, he knows all the best plays. Again, he was like super innovative in this tournament. I kind of figured out the best way to play the man meta. He was super explosive with the PA shot wheel play, and then figured out the best way to play was with the playmaker. Decroft, on the other hand, he was a bit more slow pace on offense. Again, he didn't utilize crossing routes or that many skinny posts that much to beat man deep. But I think also too is Decroft's like a really mature decision maker. Decroft's one of the last people I would ever pick to like make a mistake in a tournament game. I mean, everyone's gonna make mistakes here and there, but Decroft's one of the last people to make a mistake. He's like an elite decision maker, and that's why he's really good on offense. Fancy, the trade-off here is Fancy's a little bit more reckless on offense. He's still a good decision maker, but there's gonna be times where he's trying to make a play, do too much, and he's gonna make maybe a couple more mistakes than Decroft. But again, he is gonna extend plays as well and get yards of that when nothing is there. Also too, I think defensively, like, these guys are both pretty underrated defensively. I don't think that's the weak point. See, that's a huge misconception, and man, I feel like people don't see the game always see the game that deeply. If you're even a casual to even like a lot of competitive guys will say, I think the worst part of their game comes on the defensive side of the ball. And honestly, I think Fancy, I think he's one of the better players at figuring out the most simplistic ways to stop any sort of offense. He is a pretty good practical problem solver on defense. Again, whether he's playing bunch, trip, something off meta, Fancy is actually a really good defensive player versus off meta. He's just good at, I guess, thinking outside the box on defense sometimes and just kind of figuring out the weaknesses on the offense. Decroft on the other hand, he's not as good versus the off meta, but Decroft has always been solid on defense, extremely solid. He has really good play recall on those third and fourth downs. So if you're coming back to a play one too many times, Decroft's going to pick up on it and stop you later in the game. I think stylistically, though, in this matchup, I just think Decroft's style of play is too basic and simplistic sometimes. Again, I think Fancy is probably the best offensive player versus simplistic, basic coverage looks on defense. And that's really how Decroft prides himself on defense. Is he's more of a send 3 to 4 from a coverage style defense and try to get home, and really try not to do too much on defense and try to make someone work. That's how Decroft usually likes to play. Again, he'll get a little bit more aggressive on like a bigger down, but I think that really plays well into the hands of Fancy. He's someone that's proven time and time again. He loves to play versatile style of defensive players where, they're not going to really come up and challenge his plays. They're going to kind of sit back and let him work, and Fancy's really, really good in those situations offensively. Again, I think the worst part of both of these guys' game, though, is I'm trying to see who gets stuck on offense first, or if they're able to figure out a strategy, figure out a game plan to get these guys thinking past their best plays. Again, I think both of these guys are just struggle mightily on the offensive side of the ball. When their best players are not there, I feel like they're just not going to figure it out. And when they get stuck on offense, they stay stuck on offense. I think that's the worst part of both of these guys' game. It's not the defensive side of the ball. Both of these guys are really solid on defense. Again, it comes to that point where, when someone has them figured out, they have a good game plan for them, a well thought out strategy. Their best players aren't there. How are they going to respond to that? And a lot of times they just aren't able to figure it out in the game, and they start to lose traction on offense as the game goes on. When someone becomes really familiar with their play calls, especially a really good defensive player. So, again, talking with T. Davis, again, this was the hardest matchup for me to pick, just because, I think in these tournaments where everyone's going to be well prepared for, what you want to do defensively, and I know it's going to come down to the freestyle aspect, and I feel like, again, that's just something neither of these guys are that good at. I gave Decroft a really slight edge in this game, just because I think Decroft just wants it a little bit more. Honestly, he has like an insane work ethic, probably the best top 3 work ethic, and he's going to come well prepared. Decroft is a true professional. I'm not saying Fancy isn't, but Decroft is just next level with his preparation, so that's why I gave Decroft an edge in this matchup. Well, let's get into it. And thank God, guys, I think I'm finally past the Decroft 12-year-old picture. Guys, if Decroft, whenever Decroft's at the next live event, please redeem this man. Like, that was bad for the brand for Decroft. Again, there was some Facebook groups out there talking about how, it looks like these guys are out here, these are Minecraft players out here. It was getting rough out here. So here, Fancy's going to start off with the motion over crosser. Again, that's going to be the most important piece to Fancy's offense is that motion over crosser. So the reason he liked that crosser so much was because they did a really good job of beating man in zone on the motion over. So anytime you motion over on a play like that on a crossing route, it's not going to get pressed. And a lot of times, too, it's a quick cut and crossing route, so it's going to get good separation. So when you're playing versus man-to-man, it's a good idea to mix in motion to get those free releases, especially on the sharp cutting routes, and that's what Fancy's doing. And then what you're going to see, too, is he has B on a drag or a slant underneath to playmaker backwards versus man. And right here, again, Fancy thinks it's man coverage, and again, Fancy gets lucky as hell. Again, maybe not so much in Madden 22. Again, this is a Throwback Thursday segment, but in Madden 21 beforehand, Fancy was known to be a really lucky Madden player, and it's shown right here, and Fancy knows he got lucky as shit. But I can't fucking. Hey, bro, they did him so wrong, bro. It's not even funny, bro. It's really bad. It's really bad. Oh my god, bro. Fucking just get me past. Oh my god. Again, starting off for Decroft, start off with a little run play here, just to get to a hash. You're going to see pro players do that. The reason pro players, run to get to a hash is because zones play differently when you're in the middle of the field, and a lot of plays don't work the same. It's a little bit difficult to explain, but if you see pros who usually pass right on first down, that's the reason why. Is they most of their best plays come on a hash because the zones just play a lot differently in the middle of the field. And here you're going to see that kind of the difference in Fancy and Decroft's offense is, Decroft, again, he doesn't have like these stock, or not even stock, but he's not utilizing as much deep crossing routes to attack those deep portions of the field, or like a skinny post. And honestly, I think anytime I watch a game like this at Decroft and Fancy, I expect the game to end in the teens. I expect it to be 10 to 17. I expect it to be 14 to 10. Something like that. I wouldn't even be surprised if it ends up 10 to 7. And as you see here, Fancy's able to play really good defense on him. Again, Fancy's really just running man with the two purples. Again, on this meta, man was extremely difficult to beat. There was not many stock routes in the game that beat man, and I don't believe, Decroft did not even have playmaker on in this tournament, so Decroft is really going to work to get someone open. So, all those corner routes that used to work, those corner routes, crossers, they just want to get open on the one-step meta. So, really, you had to utilize, get somebody in motion. Decroft is able to fit in a low pass curl there with the aggressive catch, but really to get someone open, the best way was utilizing like a drag underneath that you were able to playmaker any direction. The playmaker drag, again, was really effective because it beat man with ease. And then you need like a motion crosser over the top to beat it. And also like the stock S post and trips was really good. Also, if you had Randy Moss in Z spot for bunch, that was also a really, really good route versus the man coverage meta. And that's a really good play here from Decroft. So those running back wheel routes were really effective in this tournament to me, because what Decroft saw was Fancy was Fancy was taking the guy that was man up to the running back, and actually I'll go back on it. Fancy would take the guy that was man up to the running back and place him in a zone to help defend against these tight end posts and little crossers. And when he did that, he left nobody on the running back. So this is something I really like to do, was utilize these running back wheels, because again, if to stop those crossing routes, you need an extra zone out there. And when Fancy did that, it opened up the running back wheel. So Decroft did a good job of getting his running back involved in this game. So Fancy really had to make a decision whether he wanted to drop that linebacker into an extra zone to help defend against those posts, so he didn't have to use it, or he's going to have to go and man up that running back himself. So Decroft did a good job of getting his running back involved in this game. Again, that was also one of the few routes that really got open were these low ball curls, and that's always a really effective tactic. Is the curls are always really good in Madden. It's just something that really just beats just about anything. What you do is you click on, once the curl turns around, you click on and low ball it and go for the aggressive catch. The reason you go for the aggressive catch is because the receiver is going to come back to the ball, so the defender behind him isn't really going to be able to make a play on the ball. Now here, a big third and 3 for Decroft again. Mainly just been variations of man from Fancy. And Fancy mixes it up on this big 3rd and 3. That's the first time he did this, and Decroft actually throws the pick on it. Again, I don't know if Decroft maybe Decroft expected it was man, and he figured he'd be able to fit that in, but I'm sure Decroft wasn't expecting Fancy to mix it up there, because Fancy hadn't blitzed him yet this game, and he did it on the biggest play, or the biggest play so far, and able to catch Decroft off guard there and got the pick. So again, the biggest thing for Decroft really is he going to be able to challenge Fancy's best plays? Honestly, that's the best way to play Fancy. Again, if you just sit back and let him work, and there, honestly, I think everybody throws a pick on that if you're playing competitive Madden. I really disliked the throw to sacks. That was good defense by Decroft, and I mean, Fancy really still had the guy open, but when they're close like that and they get a hit on the quarterback, as you will see. So yeah, once the pass rusher is close and they get a hit on the quarterback, those throw to sacks, they usually end up going to the defender. So honestly, Fancy, I mean, either side, you're probably pretty upset. I mean, obviously for Decroft, he's not upset because he just got the pick, but honestly, it was pretty good defense. But honestly, Fancy had the guy as well. I mean, I feel like that's a pick most people are going to throw there because I mean he was pretty open. So in this big 2nd and 10 here in the red zone, what Decroft is going to do, the reason he's motioning over the streak is he's expecting cover 2 right here from Fancy, and that was a great play by Decroft. So what happened on that play was, Fancy ran a cover 2 shell, so he had his inside guys. The inside guys were manned up, but he put his outside corners in the clouds, and the reason Fancy did that was to help defend against those post routes. Those tight end posts, they're going to get open on their own versus man coverage, but if you bracket them and you have a post and a cloud flat, then they're not going to get open. But as soon as you do that, it's going to open up those outside receivers because they're no longer manned up, and that's what's going to open up the deep middle of the field. Because again, in cover 2, you see here in the gameplay, the deep halves gravitate towards the outside portions of the field because again, they're deep halves. They're assigned to guard those deep sidelines, and that's what's going to open up the deep middle there. So that was a great play designed by Decroft. So here, and this is the crossing route play here was really Fancy's bread and butter play. The reason why, and I'll pause it, the reason why this play was so effective was because, again, the crossing route just did a great job of beating man coverage. And you had the out route, the little out route here versus the blitz. To guard the crossing route, what you had to do was put your outside corner on the trip side into a deep third. And that would help guard that crossing route because, again, that deep third had nobody else to guard on this play because there was no streak pulling him deep. So that was a really good adjustment for the crossing route. But as soon as you put that outside corner in a deep third, there is nobody accounted for the X receiver on the outside, so that's what opened up these little out routes. So it was kind of really a give and take. Do you want to give up the crossing route and so it was really a give or take. Do you want to give up the out route? Do you want to give up the crossing route? But honestly, Decroft could have been a little bit better strategically and thought outside the box a little bit more. And you're going to see in an upcoming tournament game what I mean by that. But again, sometimes you can't just play, basic and simplistic. Sometimes, there is a way to take away both, but it wasn't a simple solution. It wasn't just, oh yeah, we're in cover 3 here. Yeah, we're in cover 2. Sometimes you got to utilize, a mix of man and zone, and really kind of think past, again, those stock zone coverages. And I think D-Croft struggles with that sometimes, and that's why I think that Fancy offensively is a good matchup for the way D-Croft plays defense, because D-Croft is not going to full-on press you when he is on defense. He's not going to just come out here and just try to completely challenge your best plays, completely just cage your best plays. He's really just more so trying to make you work down the field. And Fancy's really comfortable doing that. Again, he's really good on offense in those situations. Again, playing versus those simplistic coverages. And again, big 3rd and 4 here. Again, you're going to see Fancy come around to this play a lot, and I think that was a great mix-up. And that's why that play is so good. Again, D-Croft is really worried about that crossing route getting open, because, again, versus that man line, it's going to do a great job of beating man. It's going to do solid job versus zone, like a cover 2 zone from the deep half. Again, those deep halves don't really do a good job of guarding those crossing routes, but the outside thirds did, and that's why D-Croft was putting that outside third out there, because he didn't want to give up that big crosser. And here, that's just great defense here by D-Croft, and again, you're going to see it wasn't just man coverage. So I know a lot of people at home watching this, they're going to say, oh yeah, he's just running man-to-man every play. Again, once it got to this part of the tournament where the top players were playing, D-Croft knows Fancy's game plan. He knows his game plan is set up. Even though it was difficult to beat man, Fancy's game plan was set up perfectly to beat man coverage. So, again, D-Croft kind of had to think past the man coverage and start mixing in some zone coverages to take away the man-beating concepts. So it made it a little bit more challenging because you had to beat a combination of man and zone. And I think D-Croft really could have took it up a notch. He honestly played really good defense in this game, but Fancy was still having players open, but he was making some mistakes, as you'll see in this game. So here, big 2nd and 21. And honestly, I was a big advocate of the X spot because I thought X spot was the most complete play on this meta, because the Y route did a great job of beating man coverage, and the Y route, if you snapped it late, you couldn't zone drop the Y route on X spot because it was a post route, not a crossing route, and that post route ran perfectly underneath the thirds, and you had a wide window to throw it before these zone drops on the left part of the field. Again, zone drops meaning like 30-yard flats, where the flat zones drop back 30 yards and to take away those crossers. But since it was a post over the middle of the field, and if Fancy had snapped this later, again, that post is going to do a great job of getting underneath those thirds. And, in a situation like this, and again, fortunate. Fancy had people, but again, just some mistake there from Fancy. And again, D-Croft was getting insanely unlucky in this game. Again, at this point, Fancy was known to be one of the luckier Madden players, and you're seeing it here in this game. And D-Croft should have had to stop him both times. You'll see Fancy's going to come back to this play a lot in this game. And that's why, again, you see the outside third. The outside third guarded that crossing route extremely well. And again, that's why D-Croft was doing that so much. But as soon as you put that outside third out there, again, that's what opened up the out route on the outside. So what D-Croft really had to do if he wanted to completely, challenge his best and completely just take away his best plays, I think he should have kind of double mapled that side a little bit more and maybe had a hard flat from the safety, because you got to think, pause it here, was, again, one of the weaknesses of this offense for Fancy was Fancy never put B on a streak route. He never put B on an out route. Never. B was always going on a drag and slant route. And D-Croft just has to pick up onto that and be a little bit more strategic. I think just be a little bit more creative. And I think D-Croft could have got away with hard flatting the safety on the trip slide, because you guys see that Fancy keeps going back to that. So at D-Croft, had the Y route manned up again. He follows him across the field because it's man aligned. And then if D-Croft put his safety into a hard flat and had the outside third, I would have guarded the out route and the crossing route. Or he could have took the outside linebacker on the trip side and put him in a hard flat, sometimes to guard the out route. Again, Fancy had players open. Again, he was making mistakes this game, and he wasn't paying for them. Again, you see Fancy. Again, Fancy is known for this. Again, he will go back to the same play a lot of times. So I was kind of curious to see if Decroft, how well Decroft would be prepared for this, and that was a great blitz pickup by Fancy. Just great tendency recognition here. A lot of times, Decroft is doing like he would play coverage twice, then blitz. He would play coverage twice or three times, and then blitz. So Fancy on the biggest down, he was expecting Decroft to get aggressive there. So that was great anticipation by Decroft. If you're at home and you're unsure of what to do in those situations, again, it's like tracking a pattern. You should be paying attention to when your opponent's blitzing, when they're not blitzing, and that should dictate your play calling on the upcoming plays. So that was good. That was good anticipation by Fancy. But again, as you see, Fancy is getting really repetitive with the play calls. You see him. He loves the motion over crosser, and you're going to always see that B is always going to cross the face of the quarterback. Decroft really has to take advantage of that. Again, he knows that about Fancy, and there was several strategies that he could have done to completely take away a lot of these best plays. But again, that's not how Decroft plays. He's planning to just kind of sit back, and he's going to try to switch it up on you, keep you guessing. But he's not really planning to just completely take away your best plays. And again, there you see Fancy back to the B drag, back to the motion over crosser. Every time Y was going over, it was a crossing route. Also, B always on the drag, had the backside out route. And again, as soon as I say that, Fancy motions over Y on a streak, and honestly, I don't mind the user there from Decroft. I mean, he just had to make his decision there. Good spacing there by Fancy, but again, there is a slight tell in Fancy setups on defense. So when Fancy is snapping Y, when he snaps Y late, it's going to be a streak route or the out and up. When he's snapping Y by the tight end, it was always a crossing route. So what Decroft could have took advantage of that, and I think sometimes, maybe hard flatted or just left a cloud on the tight end side when Fancy snapped by the tight end. The reason being is because, again, B was coming along on, drags and slants, or even hard flatted the safety on the tight end side because, again, Fancy was never, motioning over Y on a seam streak. He never put his tight end on a seam streak. So Decroft definitely could have gone a little bit more creative, knowing that he knows exactly Fancy's best plays, but again, he wasn't planning to completely take them away. He wanted him to work. And again, and Decroft gets here to a big 3rd and 16, and again, it's been a lot of just the straight up man from Fancy. And again, Decroft had the crossing route there, and honestly, Decroft should have gone to this a lot more. Again, Decroft wasn't really making Fancy respect the deeper portions of the field in this game, and he had the deep crossing route there. And again, that deep crossing route was so good because, again, it never got pressed by the one step ahead. It got that free release. Not only did it get a free release, it got a little bit of a speed burst. And, those quick cutting routes are going to do a great job of beating man. And the reason Decroft had the flat zones underneath, or I mean not the drag routes underneath, is because he expects Fancy to shade up on a 4th and 6 or on a 3rd and 10 like that. And what shade up basically is, it basically assigns your cornerbacks to play over the top coverage, meaning they're going to run back, they're not going to press. So those underneath drag routes, again, they're quick cutting, and they're going to do a great job versus shade over the top coverage. And on a fourth and on a third and long, again, you got to expect somebody to play over the top coverage here because they're worried about the first down marker. So that was a great play design by Decroft. You just could have been a little bit more patient there. Again, back to a 1st and 10. And you're going to see Fancy comes right back to this play. Again, this was definitely Fancy's best play. And you see, Decroft never completely took it away. He never just showed Fancy that, hey, I can just completely cage this play. And once Fancy sees that, again, he's going to keep going back to it as he should. And again, I think Decroft's falling into the trap where you got to challenge Fancy to think past his best plays. Show him that you can completely cage that play. Make him go to other plays. Make him beat you with other plays. Make him have to adjust in the game a little bit. And again, right there, again, Fancy has just got to throw that pass away. Anytime a cornerback is trailing like that, they're like a yard behind in man coverage. Again, once you throw a ball, especially on the run, and you throw it 30 yards down the field, you got to anticipate the cornerback to catch up to him. Again, just another bad mistake there by Fancy. And again, if you're Decroft, you got to be pissed in this situation, but you just got to tell yourself next play and try to fight through it. Because honestly, Fancy could have had 0 points at this point of the game. Like, Decroft is dropping a pick every single drive. And again, on a meta like this too, there's no risk to calling really a bad play because you can just throw it away, live to fight another down. Because you really weren't worried about the blitz on this type of meta. It was more so the coverage was really good. So again, Fancy was just guessed wrong on that play. He didn't have anybody there, so he really just has to throw it away. And based on that last play, again, Fancy now sees that Decroft has, a 30-yard flat out there on the trip side to guard that deep crossing route. And now Decroft is starting to make Fancy play past his best plays and think past his best plays. Again, I think that was the first point of the game where Decroft completely took away that play. That was really good defense. Fancy, again, was able to extend the play there. And this 1st and 15 for Fancy, this is where you get to see the chess match of competitive man. So the reason why Fancy called this play here the PA shot wheel play is because, again, you're basing your play calls off of the last play a lot of times. Sometimes you got to think a few plays ahead depending on who you're playing. But in a game like this, again, he saw that Decroft ran on the last play, man coverage. Or he saw from his post-snap reads that Decroft was running man coverage mainly across the board. And Fancy knows conceptually that that S-Post does a great job of beating man coverage deep, and he saw that Decroft had the deep pass. So really, if you're at home and you're trying to get better at competitive Madden, make sure you're making your post-snap reads. And again, that was all from what his post-snap reads on the last play. Again, he was able to realize, okay, he's running this coverage, and then he knew the weakness of that coverage, and then he called play to beat it on the next play. And if you guys are looking to get more help making your post-snap reads and coming up with concepts to beat particular coverages, the MaddenAcademy.com. Check out our Madden 101 course, our route combo development and spacing course, and you guys will learn. You will have drills and concepts to beat or to make your post-snap reads, as well as concepts for beating any coverage in the game, and that apply to any single man. So again, what makes these pros great is, again, they have a good conceptual understanding of the game. They understand what beats certain coverages, and Yeah, in this situation right here, big 2nd and 10, Fancy has no timeouts. Really, you just gotta again accept that Fancy is gonna kick the field goal here, and really just protect the deep middle and protect those deep sidelines. Do not allow somebody to get out of bounds here. And Decroft again did a great job of taking away those deep sidelines. Again, this is just great game management on Decroft's part and understanding the situation and not giving Fancy those deep sidelines here with the deep crosser in that situation, not giving up the S post. Now coming into the second half, if you're Decroft, again, this is where you have to, you had a slow first half. Again, you got to figure them out as the game goes on. This is something I always point out, something I highly value is, how do you progress as the game goes on? Because every single Madden player in the world, there's going to come a time, when someone figures out a good strategy versus certain plays they like to do, and are they able to figure that out in the game? And that's something that Decroft has always struggled with. So I'm curious to see what adjustments he makes going into the second half. Again, I think Decroft, he needs to do more crossing routes, and he's actually going to do it here. This was something he was missing in the first half, and I think this would have gave Fancy trouble. Again, Fancy had a great mix-up here on defense, and he was able to blitz him here, but Decroft still was able to get it off. I think Decroft should go right back to that play. He did not do that enough. It's gonna be man. It's gonna be a lot of the zone coverages. Decroft has to go back to that play more often and realize that that's a play that's gonna give Fancy trouble. And I don't think Decroft picked up on the first half that when he ran that deep crossing play, he had that wide open on the 3rd and long. He just missed it. And here on a second goal at the 1. Again, these are the toughest parts of the field to score, but Decroft's a player that I expect to have something in this situation. Again, Decroft is too well prepared for these tournaments to not have something to score at the 1 here. Again, he's someone I always expect to. He's gonna have something for down there. Honestly, here for Fancy now in the second half. Again, Decroft was starting to play good defense on you. Decroft was starting to challenge Fancy's best plays at the end of that first half, and it was giving Fancy a little bit of trouble. So now I'm curious to see how Fancy adjusts to that adjustment from Decroft. So what Decroft was doing at the end of that first half was on the trip tight end side again, he saw Fancy was doing a lot of crossing routes to that side. Deep crossing routes to that side, and to stop those deep crossing routes, again, you usually need a 25 or 30-yard flat, and Fancy did pick up onto that, and he's going to go to a different play. He's going to go to this tight end crosser that's going to usually get underneath those flats, but it wasn't there on that play, and Fancy was able to extend the play there. Again, Decroft played phenomenal defense on that play. Again, Decroft is starting to lock into really what Fancy likes to do, and he's starting to take away challenge his best plays. Unfortunately, Fancy was just able to make a great play there. He just extended the play. So again, if you're Fancy, Fancy did not account. Fancy has not used his halfback once this game, and I think it's making it a little bit easier on Decroft to play defense as this game goes on. Right there, he was able to get someone open. Again, what made defense difficult sometimes versus that playmaker as a user defender, if you're wondering why did Decroft not just run with the slant, he had the S-post covered, it was because, again, Fancy has playmaker on that receiver, so again, that receiver is a threat to turn around at any second. So Decroft was anticipating the playmaker, and Fancy didn't playmaker him, but I'm not mad at that user there by Decroft. Again, here I Again, if Fancy's gonna run this play, again he's got to snap the Y route a little bit later than that. Again, he snapped that way too early. The reason is if you snap X spot by the line again, it's something that there's a much smaller window to throw the post route. Because again, Decroft had those 30-yard flats out there. If Fancy had snapped that X spot route late, again there would have been a much wider window to throw the X spot route, and also got better separation when you snapped it late. And that's why I really like the X spot play. Here at 2nd and 10 again. Decroft is really on his ass at this point in the game. I like this from Fancy here, just kind of keeping him off balance. Again, here, Decroft does... Again, this is a really unfortunate game from Decroft. To be fair, on that play, I think Fancy should have clicked on and agged it because it looked like the crosser did have a step on him, but Fancy decided to not click on and aggressive catch that, and it ended up landing directly into Decroft's hands and dropped the pick, and then Fancy scores on the really next play. Again, this was actually this was an insane game. Like I said, Decroft actually could have held Fancy to 0 points in this game, and instead Fancy has he has 24 points right now. And again, at this point in the game, and this is what I mean is I feel like both these guys start to lose traction as games go on offensively. Again, once someone starts gaining familiarity with their best plays, honestly, they're both players. I think they both adjust better on defense than they do offense. They're not the best defensive players, but both of you guys, I feel like are pretty underrated defensively. They are pretty solid on defense. I think at these point in the games where they're both starting to play good defense on each other are they going to be able to create plays in the game to specifically beat what somebody's doing? And that's something both these guys have really struggled with. And that's why games between these two in these tournaments are usually really low scoring. And that's why I always predict, this game to be in the teens. Fancy has 24, but Fancy in reality really could have 0 points in this game so far. And again, right here, 2nd and 10 from Decroft. Again, the crosser has been killing Fancy. Like, Decroft's just bouncing around from play to play, and he's not going back to what has been killing Fancy in this game, and that is that deep crosser. Again, I would love this. Fancy is not putting up those deep zone drops for most of the game, so Decroft really just got away from like his best play in this game. Again, watching this play again. Fancy's just running basic man-to-man. Fancy doesn't have any 25, 30-yard zone drops on the field on this play. Decroft has just got to pick up on that and start pounding away with that crosser play because again he doesn't have the zone drops up. Decroft has to pick up onto that. Again, Fancy gets into a big 3rd and 10. He's been killing him with the man coverage. And again, Fancy, a lot of times in these situations when you're in offense, you got to think, okay, what has the defense been doing in these situations in previous moments of the game? And earlier moments of the game, Fancy has really liked the blitz, specifically out of Mike Will in these moments of the game. So from both sides, again, it's anticipation and play recall. Again, if you're D-Croft, you got to pick up on to, Fancy has really liked the blitz on these 3rd downs. And again, really it just needs a, max roll with a crosser, drag underneath something. Because again, the crosser has been open the entire game for D-Croft in this game. Again, you see here, Fancy, again, he went back to the blitz on those when he really needed to stop on that big 3rd down. Fancy dialed up the blitz, and he gets D-Croft the check down and forces him to a field goal. Again, back on offense for Fancy, and honestly, I think both of these guys are really starting to lose traction on offense, and they're starting to regress here. Both of these guys have completely picked up on each other's tendencies of what they're doing, and both of these guys are honestly super struggling on offense. So the biggest difference in this game is Fancy has forced D-Croft to put up those 30-yard flat zones. Again, Fancy is crosser, crosser, crosser. The problem with it is, again, Fancy came out with it and he was having success with it early. But this is what I mean about Fancy is he'll start to regress over the game and just he gets too repetitive with this play calling. And he hasn't taken advantage of the fact that D-Croft has had to respect the deeper portions of the field. And now Fancy is just never checking down underneath and taking advantage of the fact he has these 30s up. D-Croft, again, Fancy hasn't sent his running back out the entire game. D-Croft really hasn't had to respect the sideline on the running back side. Like, if Fancy had wheel route his running back at any point, or really did like put his running back in a wheel route, an option, again, I would have made it a lot tougher for D-Croft to play defense. Even if Fancy just did that a couple or a few times a game, again, D-Croft would have then had to allocate resources towards that player, and it would have opened up other options for Fancy. Again, Fancy did a great job to start this game, setting D-Croft up with the crosser. And again, D-Croft now has those 30-yard flats, and Fancy's really just not taking advantage of that. And he could have, again, whether it be a tight end post, again, those short tight end posts that get underneath the 30-yard flats, whether it be drags from the tight end post, anything like that. Fancy, again, is just starting to get too repetitive at this point. Again, D-Croft really bagged him up on back-to-back plays, but again, Fancy just ran with the quarterback there and extended the play. Again, second and 7. Another reason why the trips tight end was so effective in this tournament, as you see here, is since the defense is man aligned, again, there's not too much help for the defense on the tight end side. Again, the numbers are weak to that side. So this inside zone was really effective in this tournament. Again, at this point of the game, all Fancy was doing on this last drive was really just running the ball. So in this situation here, you're a viewer watching at home, you're in this position. Again, what Fancy did was a smart thing to do from a game management perspective. He knows that Croft is going to take up some timeouts. Really, the biggest goal should just be going up 2 possessions in this situation and forcing your opponent to recover an onside kick. Because, again, the chance to recover an onside kick, I mean, honestly, you have a higher chance of getting struck by lightning while simultaneously getting hit by a train before you do recovering an onside kick on Madden 21. So as long as you go up 2 possessions and your opponent has no timeouts, again, it was just mathematically impossible for Croft to really get back in this game. So really all Fancy had to do at this point of the game was run the clock out. And again, if you guys struggle in those game management situations, the MaddenAcademy.com, we have a course on there for clock and game management situations where I break down real game situations from myself and other pros in these real game tournament situations. Again, over about 3 hours of tournament gameplay in there. But really, that was it. So now Fancy just really has to kneel it out. I mean, Croft will have 12 seconds or something. But again, really the key to this game was because you guys were kind of polar opposite on offense. So honestly, Croft really wasn't able to gain much traction on offense throughout the game. And Fancy, again, he came out hot on offense in the first 1.5 drives. And again, Fancy did a great job of setting him up with the motion over crosser, forcing Croft to put up those 30-yard flat zones. The problem is, as the game went on, Fancy really just never took advantage of that and didn't start attacking other parts of the field once he had set Croft up to really respect those deeper portions of the field. Again, Fancy has always had this bad tendency of he just starts play spamming as the game goes on. So when he's playing someone that's familiar with him like Croft, that usually comes back to hurt him. But in this game, Croft, honestly, the biggest key to the game was Croft really just couldn't catch a pick in this game. And honestly, Fancy could have ended up with 0 in this game, but he ended up winning. Again, then for Croft on offense, again, Croft, he ran the crosser play twice. Again, Fancy was leaving open the deeper portions of the field the entire game. Croft never, Fancy really wasn't putting a 30-yard flat zone up because, again, Croft was never attacking it deep with a crossing route. So, and if you're Croft, that was something you definitely had to mix in more. But anyways, guys, it's a good games. Those are my bros, and it's going to be that way forever. Also, too, if you guys are looking for more in-detailed insight on these tournament level games and certain situations, whether it be pocket presence, adjusting on the fly, how to attack certain coverages, how to manage games, the MaddenAcademy.com. Check out our programs, check out our courses. Love you guys. Like, comment, subscribe. I'm out of here. Good games forever.